Oh, yo, 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 yo. Oh, yo. Came up from the struggle, now we stacking chips. Black Wall Street, we rebuilding from the pits. Politics and business, we beyond rich. Donnie Glover Show, watch us shift the switch. Donnie Glover Show by BMOnews.com. Spotlight on the hustle where the real ones come. Every episode, dropping knowledge, dropping bombs. Donnie Glover Show by BMOnews.com. Talking black excellence, ain't no exclusivity. History is making, reclaiming our divinity. Break by break, rebuilding our community. Donnie Glover Show, celebrate unity. Donnie Glover Show by BMOnews.com. Spotlight on the hustle where the real ones come. Every episode, dropping knowledge, dropping bombs. Donnie Glover Show by BMOnews.com. From the boardroom to the streets, we making waves. Business minds running, new paths paved. Politicians listen, they know we the brave. Black Wall Street dreams rising from the grave. Donnie Glover Show by BMOnews.com. Spotlight on the hustle where the
we have some stars in the building.
Donnie Glover Show by BMOnews.com.
We'd like to welcome you to BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. Special thank you to our executive producer of Be More News in Niagara, Mr. Emmanuel Price. We're up here on, this is the New York side, and that's the Canadian side, and we will be there for the New Year's dropping of the ball or somewhere around here. Very beautiful Niagara Falls, some of the best water in the world. So make sure you get out, get your passport, and do some traveling. And keep watching BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. Welcome to BeMoreNews.com, the news before the news, where we uncover the truth. Here on Atlantic, Mississippi, with our very dear friend Corey Mathis. A beautiful town, New Orleans. Keep watching BeMoreNews.com. We're going to give you an update. 10 years since Katrina. The news before the news, where we uncover the truth.
Wall Street, we rebuilding from the pits. Politics and business, we beyond rich.
First name's Donnie, last name's Glover. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. Listen, today's show is all about honor, courage, and commitment. With us, we have Councilman Pete Smith. Ted Hut!
Sir, how you doing?
How are you?
I am doing amazing. Always blessed to wake up every single day with oxygen in my lung and a purpose for why I'm living.
Honor, courage, commitment. Is that the Marine code?
It is. It's and I think it served me well. Honor, courage, and commitment. So, I've served in the military for the last 27 years, and I always tell folks the Marine Corps saved my life, even though it almost took my life. It still saved my life, and so I'm grateful to serve.
How did it save your life?
If most folks don't know, I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, and I had a very crazy upbringing. My mom being 19 with 5 kids, us moving around Chicago 15 different times of the first 17 years of my life. My senior year in high school being homeless. My brother and sister both being incarcerated, and then the other 2 were on probation. I mean, it's just the chaos that we lived in was very unpredictable, and it would have been easy for me to go down that path. But I think God had a different plan for me, and that's why I'm here today.
How was it growing up in Chicago? I mean, Baltimore, I live in Baltimore. This is a tough town, but Chicago is much bigger, a lot more people.
It is. And if you go back to the early 90s, late 80s and early 90s, Chicago was very tough. It was rough. And gangs really ruled the communities that we lived in, drugs. My uncle was participated in some of that. One of my cousins who I grew up with was in a gang. And in fact, he's in prison right now for murder. He's been there for like 25 years. And so I saw what an unscripted and undisciplined environment can do to young people. because it impacted just about everyone around me. And it's part of my motivation of why I will never go back down or go down that path.
Councilman, if my math serves me correctly, you joined the military prior to 9/11.
That's correct.
You know, I'm a big Navy SEAL fan, military shows, Six, all of them. I've watched them, and one of the themes constantly, at least over the past 25 years, is the impact of 9/11. Where were you when that happened?
On 9/11, I was actually at Camp Lejeune. I enlisted in the summer of '98. And for those first 3 years, I had went to Pensacola, Florida. I served about a year and a half or a year over in Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, before they had the prison there. And then I left there and I went to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, which is where I was on 9/11. And the crazy part is we were in training on that September 11th and at one of the headquarters buildings. And I remember because obviously everyone remembers where they were on 9/11. And as we were getting training on some systems that we were responsible for, that's when another Marine had came in and the TV was already on, but we weren't really paying attention to it. I think they drew our attention to the TV, and that's when we realized we were under attack. But everyone in the room at the time was saying, well, I guess we're going to war. And that evening, that about a few hours later after we were released from that training, our command told us to go back to the barracks. I was living in the military barracks at the time, and to prepare our gear and to get ready. The crazy part is I actually didn't deploy for another 2.5 years after that. But there were other military components as well as Marines who did go forward that year. But it took another 2.5 years before I actually went overseas.
How was it waiting 2.5 years? I would imagine you were amped. I mean, initially you see this happening, we got to go deal with them.
Yes, I think for me emotionally, I was ready when I saw that. I mean, I teared up a little bit because I was so frustrated. And when we sign up, I signed up because I wanted free school. And I wanted to get out of the environment I was in Chicago. I didn't really sign up at the time for a patriotic purpose. I hate to say that. It wasn't. It was after I got in that I fell in love with the Marine Corps, that I fell in love with serving, and that I fell in love with sacrifice. It's after I got in. But initially, it was just, well, let me go take this route because they're going to pay for school, and I don't have any resources to pay for that. So that's why I went. But that day, I was willing to sacrifice it all, and to this day, I still am. The first moment I went to Afghanistan in January of 03 or 04 was my first major deployment in a combat zone. But waiting that 2 years, it was like this roller coaster of, is it our turn? Well, when are we going to go? Because we were ready to sacrifice because that's ultimately what we signed up for. I tell folks there are the two most important days of your life is the day you are born and the day you understand why. Why were you born? And for the last 45 years, I understand why I was born. And even then, on 9/11, I was willing to sacrifice that because part of my purpose of living was protecting this country.
How'd you come across that?
As a kid who grows up in chaos, and you're probably familiar with it. My brother, my cousins and uncles, they were all in gangs. I think part of it was just a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose. When you have this family and these brothers around you at the time, they just were giving us something that we didn't get from anywhere else. I mean, we were isolated. We were all struggling. We were all poor. And so it's one thing when you are isolated and poor by yourself, but when you have other folks who are looking after you or helping you with a few dollars or whatever the case, no matter how they got it, it's always fulfilling. And so for me, the Marine Corps became that brotherhood. It became that purpose-driven sort of goal-oriented mindset that it created for me to do something that was big and meaningful and to give purpose and intent for my life. I didn't want to just grow old and die, and I wanted my life to mean something. and to matter. And so that's why I was willing to do that, even on 9/11.
I can't help but think of the governor's book, The Other Westmore. Is
Yeah.
there the other Pete Smith?
What- you know, it's,
But you saw it. You
yes.
told me in the pre-interview, and many of us in urban America face that. You can go right or you can go left. There's really no middle ground.
Right.
You're going to make the right decision or you're going to make the left decision, which typically ends in the penal system. America's only 5% of the world's population, but we have 25% of the incarcerated people, nearly 40% look like you and I.
Yes.
You and I, it's almost like a coin, a flip of the coin.
It was for my mom's sons. It was one half went the other way and the other. But I don't blame my mom. When she's 13 years old, pregnant, being kicked out of her house in Chicago, and not a support system there to help her. She was just trying to survive, and she did the best she could. I can't imagine being an adult at 21 years old trying to figure out life. Imagine being 13, pregnant, and trying to figure out life. And since that date, I became a young adult and in the military. I've actually helped take care of my mom. In fact, I moved her here about 12 years ago, and I know. And so I help her on a weekly basis. But when she got here, she got her GED. This was all about 7 years ago. She got her associates, and then from BCCC, and then she went to UB and got her bachelor's degree. And so I was so proud of her because she literally gave up her life to try to find a way to get her children across the border, across the threshold to success. It was hard. One of my sisters who did 2 years in prison, I love her to death. I do. But her motto growing up was she's going to make it by hook or crook, right? And so you probably heard that. And so to hear someone who say that and feel that's the only way that they can survive tells me that the world was not, set up for success for them. And I want to change that. That's why I do what I do, and I tell my story, and I focus on young people because there are thousands of Donnie Glovers and Pete Smiths out there who, when they were young, would have went left and ended up in prison or ended up as a drug dealer or ended up murdered, but they didn't. They had a light shining on them, and they had a vision that was put in them, that seed that told them that they were supposed to do something different with their life. And I am just putting water on this seed and growing it as best I can so that I can show other folks like us that there is a way out, and we can become the leaders in this country that helps many more folks like us.
We should put it out there. I don't know that I've even said it. You're running for county executive, Anne Arundel County.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's I in 2005, 2006, I was helping another gentleman by the name of George Johnson. He was a sheriff of Anne Arundel County, and he was running for county exec. His daughter, Hope, believe that, was my daughter's babysitter. And because of that, we were just helping and volunteering. Now, George ran and wasn't successful. This Anne Arundel County is especially 20 years ago was a very conservative county, and to some extent, it's still a moderate county. So he wasn't successful, and so the irony that in 2006 he was unsuccessful in that race, and I volunteered on this campaign. That 20 years later, in 2026, we are going to cross that threshold. Not because we're entitled to it, but because we're going to work hard for it. Because our resume speaks for itself, and because we're the best candidate in the race, because we believe in people and those folks believe in us, because of all these different things, and that's why we're going to cross that threshold.
I wanted to ask you about the threat of cybersecurity in your neck of the woods. Is that an issue with you?
It is. In fact, Anne Arundel County was hacked here a few months ago. That investigation and report is still ongoing. They have not released, the county have not released the specific details on exactly what transpired, how it happened, and what we did to repair it or fix it. I'm assuming later this fall we'll get that information. The council was, brought into a closed door session where we were giving some updates when it comes to what that something did take place, not what, but something took place, and that the county was working to return services back to their original state. And so what does that mean? We weren't given a lot of clarity on exactly why the services were actually taken down and what impact it created. But it is a very real threat. Cyber, I work as a Marine. I'm an intelligence officer in the Marine Corps. And in my civilian job, I work at U.S. Cyber Command. And so I understand. And before that, I worked at DISA back in 2015. And so I know what these threats look like. Ransomware and all these other sort of attacks can create chaos in a local jurisdiction, especially if they are completely dependent on services, computer services that run a lot of the departments and their interactions with the public. And so it is a very real threat. And I think every jurisdiction should take a real hard look at how they are strengthening and enabling their IT departments to be in a better defensive posture so that they can prevent these types of attacks from occurring.
Does AI make the landscape even more dangerous from your perspective?
It is definitely a double-edged sword. And while it has created efficiencies in some aspects, it can also create sort of fallacies in these efforts where people become dependent on AI and the real analysis is not done by a human. We were in the process of talking about the RTIC. The RTIC in Anne Arundel County is called Real-Time Information Center. And what it is a police-driven operations center that has access to speed cameras, public safety cameras, red light cameras, for example, or commercial establishments who volunteer into the process. And the intent was, because there are thousands of these cameras, how do you have a human enabled to be able to review all these? Well, you can. It's almost impossible. So you need some sort of AI solution that tells it to bring forward camera feeds that have these specific activities occurring in it, because one person can't just scroll through and identify it. So you need to enable them. And while that can be a success for the police department, it certainly can. There's also the other side, like if nefarious or malicious hackers are able to modify that code to look for things that you didn't tell it to look for, it can be a double-edged sword and constantly bring forward things that are not what you're looking for. And so it's a blessing and a curse, just like TV. TV is a blessing and a curse. The internet is a blessing and a curse. While we're able to learn so much more, when we were young, we didn't have the internet. There was no cell phone that we could bring up in the 80s and Google what question that we were asked. We had to go find it out from our friends, read it in the library, in the books that were there. That's how we found information. And so when you are dependent on information like the internet, for example, it also opens up the door for folks who are sending other pieces of information that are not true. And so you're having to navigate between, well, what is true and what is not, and who's the deciding factor on what that is. And so, yes, AI is a double-edged sword. I am hopeful that mankind and humans will hopefully see the benefit and the positive out of it and not focus on any negative aspects of it, and put in those sort of parameters that prevent us from doing nefarious things.
So Darius Moore from LinkedIn posed the question about the amount of cybersecurity jobs. Will AI disaffect those opportunities for human beings?
I think there's still a place, especially in the federal government. I can't really speak about the commercial establishment. My assumption is there's always a transfer. So even when we replaced humans for doing a lot of the mechanical stuff in the job factories, you still need people who now program those computers and fix them. So it just transferred from some skill set to another skill set. And so I think there's always going to be a place for humans to be monitoring AI and or coding it and or perfecting it and or auditing it, because it needs to be audited on a regular basis, so that it's just the skill set will transition from something that's physical with your hands to something that's a little bit more mental.
Councilman, are you a victim or victor?
I am a victor. I will never be a victim. And I have been in situations where and the reason I say that is, if we allow ourselves to walk around like victims, I've seen victims who emotionally lock themselves in the house because they're afraid of what might be outside the door, what might be haunting them or tracking them down. What is that? You will always be the villain in the story you don't write, right? And so in my story, in my life, I'm going to be the champion of things that impact and change our environment. I'm going to be the victor of all of the financial and circumstances. Like I've had a rough life, but I'm not using that as a crutch. I'm using it as motivation. I met my father one time in my life when I was 21 years old. It was the only time I ever met him. And the guy actually gave me the wrong address. And and for about 40 minutes, I'm looking at this building for the address, and it is an empty building, like no curtains on the window. It's an empty building. And for 40 minutes, I stood in front of this building because when I called the number that I had for him, his girlfriend picked up. I was 21 years old. And for 40 minutes, she told me, well, that must be the right address. Ultimately, she conceded, and all I want to do was give her a picture to her so she can give it to him. And when she came out, it was behind me, the building, and like 3 or 4 buildings to my left. So for 40 minutes, she was looking out her window, looking at me, looking at an empty building. I got to tell you, I felt about this small. And
it wasn't you.
Correct.
That was her stuff.
It was. And so the very next day I came because I knew what building she was in. Then I stood on the porch. I sat on the porch for about an hour, maybe 2 hours, waiting on him to either come. And so he did. He came to the back door. He was stretching, and I looked at him, and I was like, "Holy crap! That is definitely my father." I looked just like him. We talked for a couple of hours. We went to go try to see his mother, my grandmother at the time, who was still alive, and she wound up not being there or not being ready. So he said, "Well, let's go see her the next day." I called, and he never answered the phone again. But I tell you that story not out of sympathy. I tell folks all the time, I learned what it means to be a father and to be a man from someone that I never knew. Everything he was, I was going to be the opposite. I didn't know what right looked like, but I knew what wrong felt like. And so that was going to be my motivation to be a victor in this story called my life. And that's why I do what I do.
Salute, sir. I was raised with a dad. He was in the house, but as I got into my 40s, I realized I was one of the only kids who had a dad. And we get older, we come to appreciate a father. Tell me about Anne Arundel County's economic strengths.
So the county has given me everything to have a successful life. We're certainly not perfect. We have things that we need to work better on as a community and as a county. But we have all the economic tools to be successful. In fact, I would argue that my councilmanic district is the most important financial district in the state of Maryland. It has BWI Airport. It has Arundel Mills. It has Maryland Live. It has Fort Meade, Northrop Grumman. The largest employer in the state is Fort Meade. Like, where else in the state do you have that much economic input? And so when it comes to the success of the county, it is certainly postured in a way to be very successful because we have a tax base and a resource to really sort of take it to the next level. And that's why I love representing my district, but certainly representing the county. And my goal as we go forward is to leverage those resources to be more specific in our asks, as well as our recruiting and efforts from a job creation standpoint. If this is our industries, we have the mothership for cybersecurity, for signal intelligence right here in this county. And so our what we should be focusing on is entities that partner well or pair well with those industries. And so you're going to see that laser focus on getting those industries even more efficient and effective here in this county.
Anne Arundel County is strategically located in between Baltimore and Washington, D.C., not to mention that you have the state's capital within your county. Do we who don't live in Anne Arundel County understand the significance of Anne Arundel County?
So I'm a fan of rising tide lifts all boats. And I think all the jurisdictions serve a purpose in creating the great state that we have. Just like we have Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, now Space Force, Coast Guard. While each of these services have their niche and their uniqueness, together, they create a defense mechanism and a military component that is second to none in this world. The same thing applies to the jurisdictions here in Maryland, between the Baltimore City and Baltimore County, even when you go south to Calvert and Prince George's and Washington, D.C., the creativity, the wealth, the amount of Black entrepreneurs and leaders in that circle is almost second to none. And so, when we work together, that's how we ensure that all of us are doing well in society, that we're all doing well in our communities. And so my efforts will be, how do we lift each other up together? How do we go across that Edmund Pettus Bridge with our arms locked here in Maryland? Right, because we got those same psychological bridges here in this country, and certainly in our state, that when we do it together, there is nothing anyone in the world can do to stop us. And that's what I'm focused on, trying to create and expand on when we win this race.
Numerically, African Americans make up roughly 17% of the county. You have to be the executive for all people. How do you see yourself fulfilling that role?
I think for the county and for the
you can't be too Black, and you have for white people you can't be too Black. For white people, for Black people you can't be. You know what I'm saying? For white people, you can't be too Black. For Black people, you can't be too white.
Yes,
you have this balancing act, not much different than a law enforcement officer or first responder. Your job is to serve all people. But you got them cousins. I got them cousins, and like, oh, you slipping. Your vernacular's a little too proper. How do you navigate that, Councilman?
So it's interesting you bring that fact. Just 30 years ago, maybe 35 years ago, Anne Arundel County was 82% white, 18% other. We are now roughly 62% white, 38% other. And African Americans, as you mentioned, make up roughly 17 to 18% of that population. Hispanics about another 17%. Asian Americans, some single digits there, and then other within that category. And so I think for me, I have been on the council and serving Anne Arundel County, whether that's as a legislator or as a executive branch member when I was the military liaison, since 2012. So for the last 13 years, I've been involved politically in the county and in the communities for over 20 years. People know what they get out of me. I have been always leading with my heart in everything that we've done. And so my resume will speak to what I've done in the community to change lives, whether they're Black, white, Hispanic, you name it. We have coalitions and communities that we've been involved in over the last 20 years. There weren't just Black communities or weren't just white communities. And so we go with where the issues are. Brooklyn Park is probably one of my most underserved communities in the county, and it's in my district. The poverty level, or at least the income level, is probably lower there than probably 90% of everywhere else in the county. And so if you go to Brooklyn Park, it's not all Black people there. It's mainly white, and then some Hispanics and Black. And so if you go to those same people in the community, when they have problems, when they call me, I answer the call. We've had community events where they've needed help. I came there with my either my truck or my hands or my volunteers. Miss Debbie, who was one of the association presidents, older white lady, who's been working her butt off in that district for a long time. She had an abandoned house that the county, for some reason, didn't. It was unboarded. It had a small fire in it. No one was living there, and it was vacant. And so for months, it was just the door, back and front door, where you could walk into. And so they kicked in the back door to do drugs or do whatever. So we couldn't get a response out of the county. So I went with my friend. We went to Home Depot, bought some woods, and we boarded up the door. We solved the problem. And so it doesn't matter whether you're black, white, Hispanic, or whatever color you are. What people have always gotten out of me is solving a problem. And so I'm going to be there to help no matter what.
What was the scariest moment for you in the military thus far?
I think in the military, when I went to, I was deployed to one of the stands. I was in Afghanistan, I was in Pakistan, and I was in Iraq, and each one of those presented a life-altering moment where I thought my life was going to be over. And Afghanistan, when I was 23, when I first deployed there, it wasn't fear, it was more of a reality check. When we had some members who were killed by a bomb, 6 of them, and I just remember them coming down Bagram. We have this road that led to the front gate, and then it led to the tarmac to get on planes. And so all of these members, these men, when they got killed, they were put on a Humvee truck in a casket, and they had a flag draping the casket. And so all 6 of these trucks came down this long dirt road that led to the runway to get on this plane that was going to take it back to Dover. And I just remember getting out of my tent that day and realizing that, wow, like this is real. That could be me sitting in that casket. And that's when I started to really appreciate the value of life and understanding why you were born, why you're here. And that was a heartbreaking moment for me when I saw that, when I saw death up front, and it was just, I could touch it and I could see it. And that's when I realized, don't waste any day not trying to make this world better. There was another moment when I went to Iraq, and before we went there, the Blackwater guys and maybe some military guys, they had got ambushed in Fallujah. And you may have seen this, that they were, they burned them, they hung them over bridges back then and during that time. And so that's what created the surge. And before I got to the surge, it was a whole bunch of people perishing, getting killed in firefights. And I knew that I was going to have to travel around the country on a regular basis. And, the crazy part is how a person will become okay with the potential of death. And I used to say to myself, if it happens, God, just make it quick. I just don't want no pain. I'm willing to sacrifice whatever you want me to sacrifice. I just wanted to be quick. And the irony that, someone could psychologically put themselves mentally in a situation where for them, they just want the death to be quick. It was just, it's eye-opening. And again, it wasn't my time. I was supposed to be here today to talk to you on this phone and tell Doni and his world that this world is great. And no matter what, each one of us we're serving a purpose. And I just want them all to understand that purpose.
Back in September 2002, there's a famous lawyer here in Baltimore named Billy Murphy. He had a brother who's gone now, Arthur Murphy. And Arthur regularly took black journalists to Jordan. So in September 2002, we did a tour of Jordan. And one day we went into the Wadi Rum Desert. Councilman, how heavy are those backpacks you carry? 75 to 100 pounds?
No, they can be pretty heavy depending. I had a lot of technical gear, so it really got heavy.
Maybe even $150.
I would say in some cases they certainly got to 100 pounds. I mean, the good thing is I was a solid dude. I was strong back then, but over time it takes a toll on your body.
You're buff. I saw you. But but I went to climb a sand dune. I'm from the streets of Baltimore. It's asphalt, it's concrete. At night, there's street lights. I went to climb this sand dune. I found myself on all fours trying to get up this sand dune. There was a Jordanian behind me in flip-flops. And that Jordanian ran like Jesse Owens from way back there, way past me, up the sand dune in flip-flops. Number two, we see people in caves and say, oh, they're prehistoric. They're uncivilized. We are so ignorant. We don't realize the caves are the AC in a hot area. But when I got on those sand dunes, I realized our soldiers who have never experienced that sand would be in for a rude awakening, especially with this guy running like Jesse Owens in flip-flops. What would you think when you saw the Middle East? Did you like, ooh, they got home field advantage, or I can handle this?
It was hot. The first time it was definitely hot. So one of the villages when I was in Afghanistan, and I have photos from this experience. We would bring them. We would do civil affairs missions where we would bring them food, school supplies, things like that they could use for. And the goal was to build relationships with the village elders, so that we can communicate and we had an open dialogue and gather intelligence if we needed it. But primarily to build that rapport, because it's easy to hate someone you don't know. It's easy to hate someone you don't know. But when they know you and they see how human you are, it's easy for them to have an open dialogue with you. And that same sort of effect happens here, even in this country. It's easy for people to hate us when they don't know us. And so when I was over there in that village, what we take for granted here in America, they had this these mud houses that were constructed out of mud, and in the middle of it, towards the back of this village, because it had a mud wall that surrounded the village, was this little, what I thought was a lake or something like that, a little small pond or whatever, but it was actually where it was their pee pond. It's where they would go to use the restroom. And wow. And I sat there and I thought about how they used the restroom. They didn't have one of the enclosed outdoors sort of restroom. It was just in the public's view, and they would just squat and take care of their business. And I'm sitting like, wow, that's, we can go to our restroom, we can wash our hands, we have toilet paper, we have all that. They had none of that. And it was just eye-opening to think that people in the world still live like that today. And so whenever I get in a mode of mine or a mood of mine, I think about how fortunate we are and how blessed we are to be in the world and have the resources that we have today. Even if it can become tough dealing with some of the political leadership that exists in Washington, D.C., I am telling you, I'm going to choose this all day long instead of that pea pond mud village. But I respect them because in their mind, that's all they know. If you grow up in Russia, you're going to speak Russian. If you grow up in China, you're going to speak Chinese. If you grow up in poverty and despair, you're going to speak poverty and despair. And that's what they have to live for, which is why it was so easy to convince them to sacrifice their lives to go, as a bomb, to go blow up soldiers or military members, because they didn't have a lot to live for. And so I want this country and the citizens in it to understand we have a lot to live for. This country is probably like 8% of the world population. When you think about that, America is literally only about 8% of the world's population. And so while we have a 90% impact in the world of that 8%, we're certainly a small piece of it. The majority of folks aren't blessed and aren't fortunate to have what we have. So never take anything for granted. But let's walk across that Edmund Pettus Bridge together so we can take that 8% of the world that we are and have a positive impact on the other 92%. And so that's my mission, and that's why I want to change this county.
this is a no-brainer for some people, but I'm going to ask anyway. I think it's just a layup.
Yeah.
But when we, America, when we go to other countries in the world, lesser developed, and maybe I've watched too many movies, but it seems like we often go there and want to tell them what to do and how to do it. We're American. We know what's best. We have democracy. Is that the right attitude?
No, it's I have always tried to maintain a moral compass. There's a reason I don't criticize people because of their belief system or because of their the way they vote. I've sat on the county council since 2012, because who am I to tell someone because they don't vote the way I vote that they're wrong and I'm right? Well, if we had lost World War II, we would have been prosecuted for a genocide or criminal conduct. But because we won, Germany was. But if we had lost, Japan, there was this documentary called Fog of War. I would encourage you and your listeners and viewers to, if they have, it's free. It's online. It's on YouTube. It's called Fog of War: The 11 Lessons of Robert McNamara. Fog of War: The 11 Lessons of Robert McNamara. And the way he describes, he essentially alluded to what you were going to say, is how do you view ourselves? How we view ourselves in the world is so much different than how the world views us. And so he puts into his 11 lessons the mindset. One of the examples he gave was we were firebombing Japan, pretty much nonstop for like a year, and they were almost to the brink. But yet, when you listen to his 11 lessons, and one of those is proportionality. Was it okay for us to drop the nuclear bomb, for example, when we were already destroying 50% of the equivalent of New York and every single city that existed over there through firebombing, not through the nuclear device? And so I'm not saying he's right or wrong. I'm saying it opens up a mindset to always try to put yourselves in the shoes of your enemy, because when you do that, you may understand their motivations and are better able and better prepared to respond to it, which is why I'm always putting my shoes and putting my feet in the shoes of those who are different from me, because how I view them may not be how they view me. That's why I said it's so much easier to hate someone when they don't know who you are. And so, yes, it is a crazy world we live in. And I always think it's important to try to understand your enemy or your opposition, because they may have merit in why they're upset. Just like when I get angry emails from citizens, the citizens aren't mad at me specifically. They're mad at the institution that I represent. So while Pete Smith did not build I-95 and took away their neighborhood or create all this traffic, the traffic is impacting someone's quality of life who's upset, and I represent the institution that's causing that grief for them. And so that mindset allows me to interact with them in a way where I don't add fuel to the fire. So when they're yelling and frustrated, I'm calm, I'm measured, because they may have a legitimate reason why they're mad, and it's not anger that's specifically for me, but it's to remediate the situation that's causing them frustration. And that's how I look at just about every problem that I encounter.
I want to speak to Councilman Pete Smith. I live over here by the airport, and these planes are just too damn loud.
Yes. Even though they move near an airport. They move near an airport that's been there for 50, 60 years. And so I get those calls. And
you got that call, huh?
I get those calls. And, there are things we can potentially do if they are in the flight line, like sound barriers, soundproofing their windows. They have windows that are a little bit more soundproof, that there are grants for from the county and the state. But for every plane that lands, there's roughly $1, maybe $2 now, that's given to a fund that is used to help modify the impact of the communities that are around the airport. And so that's one of the ways I can try to help alleviate their pain.
When I think of the airport, when I think of Maryland Live, when I think of Annapolis, when I think of Glen Burnie, you've got a pretty big county. You have some major assets that you have to protect.
Yes.
What becomes the priority?
So the priority is the economic independence of every individual and organization here in this county, organizations meaning including businesses. When we give communities a skill set or a tool to be successful, when you give an individual a tool to be successful, they can stand on their own 2 feet. I want our men and women here in this county to live the American dream, whatever that is for them. And I don't want government to be an impediment to that, a bridge, a roadblock to that. And so the priority is, how do we create efficiencies in county government that makes your life easier? Maybe you just want a permit for a deck that you want to build on your house, and you don't need to spend a year going through the permit process. Maybe there is some housing affordability issues. So we built this stepping stone of housing, whether it's tiny homes, which I have a piece of legislation right now that we're discussing on the council to build tiny home communities to make it that first step of housing for folks who are young and they want to go into the workforce. And every single one of these could be purchased for under 200,000. Those are the types of solutions I think that are creative and out of the box that can help enhance the quality of life for folks who want to call this place home. And so for me, one, hopefully, and I'm praying every single day, but as the next leader of this county, is to create solutions that make sense for people and that are not overly complicated, that are not taking years to process. We have a mechanism, and I want us to go through that mechanism, but nothing we're ever doing in Anne Arundel County should be complicated. We're not putting someone on Mars. We're not sending someone into space. We're creating an opportunity so they can open up a burger joint because some mom and pop who cooked out of their back kitchen has a recipe that everyone loves, and they want to open up a burger place, but it might take $2 million to open it up in Anne Arundel County. Well, why? Why should it take $2 million to open up a business in Anne Arundel County? That's insane. And so, eliminating some of those barriers for success is one of the ways I think we are going to take us from, as the superintendent says it, from good to great. And I'm encouraged that he's in his position, because we're certainly going to do the same thing with Anne Arundel County government.
I should tell people that I first met you thanks to Cynthia Brooks, daughter of B. Gaddy, and she was having a fundraiser event, the Baltimore County Corvette Club. They all came down to Maryland Live, and I met you there. And I just had a question for Cynthia. How do you know this guy?
We served together.
Relationship with Cynthia Brooks, with the B. Gaddy Center, all the way here in Baltimore. I mean, she wouldn't stop talking about you. I'm like, well, I got to meet this guy.
Yep. Well, she did 20 years in the Army.
That's right.
She served in the Army, and in fact, her last assignment, when she was on active duty, she and I worked together in the same office space. That's how we met, and we poured water and sort of massaged that relationship over the last 20 years that I've known her. I also run the Marine Corps Toys for Tots. So all the families that we help in Baltimore City and Baltimore County during Christmas I've been responsible for that, including B. Gaddy's Women's Shelter. When they do the Christmas event and they give out donations, the toys they give out, we help them collect. We give them those. I literally come to Cynthia every year with a U-Haul truck full of toys, and I'll drive it myself. Like, I'm a hands-on dude. I've helped pack the truck, and I drive it to her establishment. It was in Patterson Park. It's fluctuated from year to year here recently. I think it's still in Patterson Park, but I love people who help people. And so I want to enhance and multiply what they're doing. The reason I even say that, because of my sister, who has some amazing quotes. She said, hurt people hurt people.
until they are healed.
Yep. Hurt people hurt people. So I want to help people, right? And so Cynthia is one of those guardians of the galaxy, right? Members who has spent her life helping others. So I want to help her and amplify what she's doing because I understand my purpose. I know why I was born.
You stole my heart.
Yeah.
All you gotta do is say "Be Gaddy." That woman helped anybody.
Yes.
And for those who don't know, where people lined up for her dinners over the years, while those lines used to be majority black, you go to that Be Gaddy dinner today, and it's majority not black.
Yes.
There are white people in line. There are Latino people in line. There are all kinds of people, not just black, right there in Patterson Park. And I'm glad Patterson Park got their head back on straight, because that is the only place that should be, right there at Patterson Park, where it has been serving people. So I knew she did the food. But when I learned that you brought toys, a U-Haul truck, I think of those people who don't have the resources to get their child something, and you just come off like a real superhero.
You know, I think we're all superheroes if we channel our energy in the right way. As I mentioned to you, I want my legacy to be different than my father's. I don't even know what his legacy was, but I know for my kids, when they look at their dad, my son who was 13, my daughter who was 19, they're going to know that the stock that they came from fought every single day, not just for them, but for everyone that was around them. And so that legacy is important to me. I was on a council meeting here last year, and we were voting on legislation that it was comp zoning. We were changing the zoning areas for land. And there was a community, Shocktown Road, that was historically black owned land. And we were voting on impacts to them. And I remember them testifying. And one of the gentlemen talked about his generation and that came before him, and the legacy he was trying to create for his family and future opportunities. I got emotional up there because, you know, where I come from in Chicago, in the stock that was raising us, didn't talk about the future. They didn't talk about legacy. They talked about the now. And what they failed to realize, and what that now, if you don't aim an arrow somewhere, it's not going to go anywhere. You got to aim it. And so the fact that I'm trying to aim my kids in a specific direction and aim our county in a specific direction, that's going to change the trajectory of where they're going. And so for me, that legacy it's powerful. I could leave this earth tomorrow and know that the 45 years I've been here, I have fought tooth and nail to be an example and to build a legacy that others can build, just like it was given for me, the police officer when I was 11 or 12 that took me in and became like a mentor to me. Officer Mr. Armistead, who was my Spanish teacher, but he was also the assistant principal of the high school, who gave me not my purpose. There were three men who impacted me: Officer Richardson, Mr. Armistead, and Mr. Sanders. Officer Richardson gave me my purpose. Mr. Sanders gave me my voice, and Mr. Armistead gave me my vision. And all three of those individuals played such key roles in my young life. That was the reason I didn't go down the path of my brother going to prison for 7.5 years for armed robbery, because he was hanging out with the wrong crew and they got high, and then they went and robbed a cab driver for $60-some, and it took 7 years of his life. Like, I don't want that. I don't need to touch the stove to know that it's hot when I see someone else touch it and they scream. I was one of those learners that learned that way. And so for me, we are going to be better as a society when all of us can lift our hands up and do one kind thing or one positive thing for someone in our neighborhood and in our community. And that's my purpose. That's why I was born.
All right, Pete, this is baseball season, Councilman, and I got a mean knuckleball. We done thrown you the fastball. We done throw you the curveball. I got to throw this knuckler on you.
Yes.
We've asked you about politics. We've asked you, you've covered Afghanistan, Iraq, didn't really touch on Montford Point Marines, but I'm gonna let you slide for now. I want to ask you the most difficult political question out there.
Yes.
How did you stay married? Tell me about your other half.
Actually, I didn't. I told you I'm not perfect. So my kid's mom we met in the Marine Corps. We actually divorced. I got divorced in 2018. And we have co-parented in a way that is so amazing. And I every time I speak to my ex-wife, you know, I tell her how grateful I am to be able to do what I'm doing because she's doing what she's doing. We live 5 minutes away from each other. We work at the same agency, she and I, and so we communicate on a super regular basis. But I know the shortcomings I had as human, and I've said this before, not necessarily publicly, but there is a difference between the financial health and wealth of your family and the emotional health of your spouse. And I will tell you that I am guilty of investing in the emotional health of my spouse, assuming that the financial health and wealth of my family was going to take precedence, because I made career decisions that impacted that, because I didn't want my family to be poor. I knew what it felt like to be poor and to live on government subsistence and move 15 different times from the day I was born to the day that I was 17 years old. That created a lot of friction in my life, and I didn't want that for my family. So I made career decisions that took me to Iraq for a year. Then I went to OCS and TBS, as well as my MOS school, which was another year and a half. I think from April of 2007 to June of 2010, I was gone away from my family, like probably 2.5 years. And that awayness literally impacts your partner. And while financially it helped my family, you have to invest in your spouse and your partner. And it is a specific type of investment. And so I will tell you and admit that I was negligent in that aspect. You learn, life is a lifetime of learning lessons. And I've certainly learned that lesson. And while we did not work out as a couple, we have certainly worked out great as parents and co-parents. And I respect her. And I'm so grateful that she is the mother of my children, because she is the type of mother that I would want to have, raising my children. And so I'll go to my grave. Hell, she's still, we've been divorced 6-7 years. She has a key to my house, right? That's how much I trust her. And so, that type of relationship, I think, is super important for our kids, because I want them to see that we worked as a community and as a unit to make sure their lives were not impacted.
I thank you for the sacrifices. I told you I watch a lot of SEAL team movies, and I prefer to watch the missions, but all of these shows what happened when the soldiers, male or female, when they come home, that readapting to civilian life. And it's got to be hell. I think of police officers who have to do this on a daily basis, or firefighters. Yes. In Baltimore City, they got to live at the station 2, 3, 4 nights in a row, and it's that separation from family. So thank you for your sacrifice. I'm going to give you the screen and let you tell people why they should vote for you. And all I ask is that when you're done, you're going to get the final word. Say good morning, world. Okay? Thank you for joining us, Councilman. We wish you the best. We are doing a Black Wall Street down in Annapolis. I will give you the details. We hope that you can come through. We celebrate Black entrepreneurs and professionals, as well as the people who support them, regardless of race. We've done these awards in about 9 cities and honored nearly 3,000 people. So here it is, and good morning, world. Thank you for joining us.
I am just so grateful to even have this opportunity to be a part of this legacy, your legacy of spreading knowledge and information to your universe. And for me, I am grateful to have the opportunity to run for county executive. And I hope and pray that people will vote for me, not because of necessarily what I just look like, but because my 27 years of serving the country, my 20 years of serving the county, my 13 years of being on the county council and working for county government, and every single step of the way, I've been there to help everyday citizens, no matter who they are or what they look like. I pride my life to being a public servant, not just at a local level, but I'm willing to sacrifice everything to make sure your community and your citizens are taken care of. So people should vote for me because I have a vision that speaks to all of them and their economic independence. Just go to votekeithsmith.com. Help us out. Help us cross this bridge because we can change this world for the better. And so, good morning, world.